Hello and welcome to the commentary box. As always, I am Sam Turner, and of course, I am joined by Jake Griffiths.
Indeed.
How are you, Jake?
I'm good. Enjoying university, settling well. Obviously, making sure the time I had to continue these incredible masterclass podcasts.
Exactly, it is a masterclass for any podcast maker. Yes. Yeah, I've been enjoying university as well. Just for the time being, we're just going to do every 2 weeks because I think me and Jake are both kind of trying to find some sort of routine because it's so different to secondary school and sixth form university life. So just bear with us for the time being. Surely by Christmas we'll find ourselves a routine, or we'll be once again getting one out each week. So just bear with us for the time being. But today we'll be talking about international football. I think we've only done one other international football kind of podcast, so we thought we'd devote this podcast for international football. And today we are going to be talking a bit about England and their and how they're doing in the Nations League. Of course, we're going to be touching on a bit about Sterling because he performed well, of course, against Spain. We'll be touching on Germany a bit and their relegation battle in the Nations League. And we'll also kind of touch on Carl Lafferty and Northern Ireland's decision to prevent him from playing for his team in Rangers. So with no further ado, we shall kick off by talking about England. Of course, they played 2 games in the Nations League for this time round. They got a draw against Croatia 0-0, and they beat Spain 3-2 away in Seville. So, Jake, I just want to get your thoughts on England's performances in the Nations League and maybe any individual performances.
Yeah, well, I think we're sort of starting chronological order with the game, so we can look at the Croatia game. Wouldn't be too much to say about it. It was quite weird when I remember watching it because Croatia got banned from being any fans at all at the stadium. So a really quiet game, almost sounded non-league-like because you could hear all the players obviously shouting for passes, manager giving orders, things like that. There were actually 500 England fans who still travelled to the game to watch it on a hill. One of them actually tried to get in as a steward, which I respect that a lot. It's got big commitments. But no, down to the actual football of it, I think it was a game where we were disappointed not to win it, but then all sides just get fairly pleased with drawing to a decent side. Obviously, we played them in the World Cup not too long ago, sadly losing that 2-1, but then to come against them again with a different game plan, slightly different formation, a couple of new young players coming in. Likewise with the Croatian squad as well, they did have a couple of young players, so it was an even mix of third and sort of second team players, and it was quite a positive, sort of outlook on it in the end, because Kane, he had a header from a corner which hit the bar. I think someone else also hit the post during the game. Maguire was about to sort of tap it in, but it deflected outwards rather than inwards towards him. So it could have easily been 2-0. Croatia did have a couple of chances. Pickford didn't have too much to do. Did make a save here or there, but overall, it was a game where Southgate was able to play some younger players who perhaps wouldn't have got much game time under previous managers who would have gone for that sort of typical big leagues, big team sort of status, like Ben Chilwell. He got his debut, so did Sancho.
Did he get man of the match, Chilwell? Did he get man of the match, Chilwell?
I think he did. And Marie played very, very well, and he was really happy with that. I follow him on social media and things like that, and he posted a lot about it.
Yeah.
He could fair well have got the man of the match there. He also, as I was saying, we talked about Sancho before. He got a debut. He came on as a sub, and this was sort of late in the game. We were looking for a bit of creativity in midfield, which I think England do lack a little bit in general. I think now we look at the squad, we're fairly solid across most areas, but in that sort of creative midfielder role, not so much. And Sancho came on the game. I think he did actually play on the wing for it, but he started to sort of cut in a bit, had a couple of crosses come into the box. He did actually open up chances for us to go ahead and win that game. So I think overall it was quite a positive performance. Obviously, a couple of young players getting games and sort of just letting the team continue to gel and develop together. You could really see us sort of coming together as a squad And I think Southgate's done a really good job, and just sort of a little bit of credit to him, to be honest. Because if we look back at previous years, Sam, I can't remember the last real decent manager that I've ever watched to be like in my lifetime, and like you, can you?
Yeah, I mean, England always for me have been so not boring to watch, but dull, not exciting. I would watch England games and I would enjoy them, but the gameplay itself, it was predictable, crab-like football, passing side to side. Even under Capello, likes of Hodgson, it was just predictable football, which was boring to watch, and I'm going to be playing with that. But now with Southgate, we're seeing some real kind of flair to it, where it's an English style almost. It's kind of bringing together the kind of the positives of every single player and trying to fit that into a tactic rather than kind of just sticking them all the best players on the pitch, if that makes any sense. Because in the past, like under Hodgson and Capello, they were just getting big name players, as you said. Like that, they weren't building a team; they were building a group of players that were the best in England, basically, weren't they? Whereas now, Southgate, yes, he is picking the best players, but he's also picking some other players that aren't just getting in there because of their reputation, but because they're playing well. And he's not afraid to drop players who aren't playing well, if that makes any sense. And it means that every player at England knows they have to work really hard to keep their position, and that kind of creates that group ethos to do well and become a team and do well. And that's what I've really really enjoyed seeing as with Southgate in charge of England. As for the Croatia game, I didn't catch a lot of it, but I would agree with you. It's a really good chance for Southgate to kind of mix his tactics up a bit, and he did just that. And it was an interesting game to watch, and it shows that we have come far, maybe since even the semi-finals of the World Cup, and maybe matured a bit as a squad, because Croatia was still a really decent side now. Haven't lost many players at all, if any, but it was encouraging. And did you see that some of the stewards were basically sitting in the stands when there was nobody around, basically looking after an empty stand? Do you see that? Yeah, it was just like them standing with no one behind them, which was quite funny. Yeah, it's a weird atmosphere. Because apparently some of the England players could hear the England fans on the hill. I think, and there was a bit of banter going on between them. And I think Pickford actually waved to them in the end, which was quite funny in the end. It was just an odd game, but yeah.
Very, very, very great for that. I think we just could go straight into the Spain game leading on, which was so much better. Not saying the Croatia game was necessarily a bad game, but you could literally see a huge improvement in our team just from that one game. Looking all over the place, you could see that. I know Pickford had a little bit of an issue, one of the Spanish attackers, where he tried to sort of turn and didn't quite do it, and sort of tackle to clear his line and get it out in the end. But you could see the reasoning behind everything. So I'll go into detail later. So when everyone talks about who's going to go and goal for England, the main reason that Pickford was chosen was because Southgate wanted a keeper who's very good at his feet and got good distribution. And the amount of times that Pickford would get the ball comfortably and play it towards some of our players, and you can see when they played it towards Harry Kane, who then turned, played it to Rashford to Sterling, and scored our first goal of the game. And you could also see it again where Pickford picked out Kane, who then played as Rashford to get his goal as well. You could just see how well things worked and the reasoning behind it. They then really understood, okay, Pickford, what is his strengths? One of them is kicking and distribution. So what we're going to look for, we're going to utilise that. And it just seemed like it made so much sense to do that. Harry Kane, obviously being a big guy, not exactly the fastest player in the world, like he does for Tottenham, Southgate's gone, okay, I want you to hold the ball up sometimes. I want you to get it. I don't want you to run with it so much. I want you to get it, find a pass, bring players towards you to open up space for your teammate to run through. And exactly what happened for the first goal, where he found a bit of space, got the ball, turned, saw Rashford, who played it to Sterling, of course, and then for the second goal, when he got the ball, held it up very well, sort of turned around the Spanish defender and then played a really good ball towards Rashford. to create that goal again. You can understand, we talked about Sterling a little bit before we had the podcast, and sort of his role within the England side is not necessarily, personally, I don't think to score goal, but to be quite creative. And obviously we'd like him to score goals as well, and he's had a bit of a goal drought, but he got 2 opportunities, and he definitely took them. And he took them very well. It's going to boost confidence across the team. We had Eric Dyer playing a really, really good game. I know people have been sort of looking and finding it funny as a tackle that he took from Ramos. It was a very, very good tackle in my opinion. He got the ball and everything well. And everything just seemed to, the plan seemed to work. Rashford in the previous game against Croatia had a really good chance to win the game for us and tuck it away. But a really poor shot. Just not very well taken at all. And similar situation to when he scored against Spain, but he decided, I'm not going to go try and hit it really hard on my left foot, try and smash it past the keeper, which he fluffed in the Croatian game. But in the Spanish game, what he did is he saw it coming across and he thought, actually, I'm going to take this with my right foot, I'm just going to guide it in. And he did exactly that. And I think you can just see how these players are starting to develop under Southgate. Like defensively, we're looking really strong. The likes of Maguire had a very good game. John Stones obviously got a yellow card in the Croatian games. He's unable to play. But Joe Gomez stepped in. You couldn't really see much difference in terms of quality at the back. We saw Trippier play again, who did very well. Always a very consistent player in the squad. Ben Chilwell had another good game. And it was just a very positive sort of outlook and result, being 3-0 up at half-time against Spain. We know they didn't have a great a World Cup. It wasn't amazing. We know they haven't quite been at the top level as they have been in previous years. But I think just so much positivity, Sam, and so much to take away from it. Like, I could go on for more, but I think I'm going to sort of attempt to wrap it up in a way. But I just think there's so much going well, and it just looking so confident and so forward. I just feel like now, the next couple of years, it could really be one of the challenges for Euro 2020. I think we've got a really good chance of causing some serious damage to some serious big teams. We talked about Germany earlier, just a little bit, saying how they're struggling. Italy have been poor, didn't even qualify. Holland, likewise. Spain not playing too well either. Belgium and France have started to rise and become very, very consistent in their play. Croatia always being up there, but I don't think there's too many teams out there that we really should be afraid of, especially in terms of the Euros. I think I still got a really, really good chance, especially with Southgate signed the new deal as well. I think everything's just going well.
Exactly. Before I kind of come on to your point about the future's looking bright, I just want to say that Eric Dyer's tackle was amazing, and I think it shouldn't have been. It was given as a penalty, wasn't it, in the end? And I just don't get why, because it was a brilliant tackle, and if you can't make tackles like that in football anymore, what's the point in having defenders? Basically, why don't we just have like goalposts in the middle of this just to get round?
It's the whole sort of diving issue of everyone being worried about sort of touching a player. But I know what you mean. Like, you can watch it in slow mo. I've seen it a couple of times, and we were saying before, we go, gets the ball first, then he takes out the man. Someone was saying to you the other day about how, if someone does a slide tackle and they get the ball first, how on earth are they meant to stop, to stand up, stop sliding to take the player? Like, it happened. Ramos was absolutely fine. He didn't do anything.
No, he was fine.
Great players anyway. He didn't even care. So
it's annoying. I just think it's something that football needs to kind of look at from afar and see, actually, where do we want to take this? Where do we want rules that are so strict you can't do that, or do we want to kind of relax the rules a bit? Not relax, but like clarify what is bad a tackle and what is not. Because at the moment, if that can be given as a foul, it's just a bit embarrassing, to be honest. But that's just on that bit. But on the future for England, I want to kind of draw parallels to the France team that won the World Cup. Because before they won the World Cup, of course, they got to the Euro final. And before that, they had a really good World Cup in Brazil as a young squad, coming off of a pretty poor South Africa World Cup where they failed.
Very poor.
And it's kind of very similar to England. With the Euros in 2016, it was extremely poor, a bit like France at the World Cup in 2010. And then we've had the Euros, and a bit like France doing well at the World Cup in Brazil and well at the Euros in France. So maybe we can kind of might be parallels, because they're both also a young team that has kind of gone through this shift from playing big reputation players like Anelka to now playing a youthful side and that has a really good brand of football. And I can see England doing the same, and hopefully that means there might be silverware come the end of kind of this movement into a more of a team and a club type feel than just like we turn up and do international football, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that's a really good point, actually. I didn't think about that before, but you can see that transition.
Yeah, exactly.
Almost, you can see players coming together, improving. New manager comes in, new style. Things just sort of click together. I think also you can talk about the manager as well, both being ex-players for their country as well.
Exactly, yeah, and knowing it inside out, kind of.
I think obviously I don't really know their management styles that well, but just sort of looking from the outside, they do seem quite sort of calm, relaxed people. They seem sort of, that might be, I don't know, maybe the new style of management that's working right now.
Exactly.
Like we talked about Manchester United, are we comparing them too much to Alex Ferguson at the time? That worked then, it's not always going to work now. And could that be the new sort of success? Modern football is now that style of manager.
Exactly.
And using young players and using their abilities rather than just going, no, he's the best. Chuck them all on the team, actually go, no, you've got potential, I think you could work this way. That links in with the tactic in my style. Win games.
Yeah, and I think you've raised an interesting point. I will try and wrap it up this England section eventually, but on that point you say about like management techniques, both Deschamps and Southgate were kind of recognised for their ability to create a sense of camaraderie in their dressing room. I think we mentioned this in one of the World Cup podcasts. France had this ritual in their team where they would stroke what's his name, Adil Rami's beard and mustache before every game as kind of like a funny thing to do. And you see similarities in the England dressing room where they had those inflatable race in the pool, didn't we? And it's kind of that teamwork is maybe the way to go forward in at least international football, because you see kind of Mourinho kind of having a kind of a strict kind of dressing room feel, and maybe that's not working anymore. Maybe you need to let players of the modern age have the chance to express themselves both on and off the pitch, and if you don't get that right balance, you lose their respect, as I think Mourinho has in his team. I hate to bring up Mourinho, but it's that kind of parallel to Mourinho doing badly and Southgate and Deschamps, who have a better team kind of strategy, doing well. And it's an interesting kind of point to draw on, and I'm glad you brought it up because it made me kind of think about it. But kind of.
That could even maybe explain why Mike actually took out the Newcastle.
Who knows? It could be trending, I'm just waiting for Graham Potter, our manager, to take Swansea out for dinner, maybe. I'm surprised he already hasn't, because his management technique in Sweden was very much like that. Apparently, when he was at Östersunds, he used to run a play, and all the players had to play in the play. So, like, they had to do dancing, singing, acting, and that was kind of part of his management style. So I'm just waiting to see the Swansea players like Wilfred Bonney, McBurney all kind of get together and perform Cinderella. So, which would be funny. But yes, that is England done, basically. I think the next set of friendlies are sometime in November, aren't they? Or the next set of November.
It might be late November.
So, yes, we just touched on a bit about the Germany situation, so I think we'll move on to that slightly. Of course, they had a terrible World Cup in which they lost to South Korea and Mexico, and their misery has continued all the way to the fact that they may be in a relegation battle. Well, the fact that they are in a relegation battle in the Nations League, as they have lost now to France and the Netherlands in the last set of games, which leaves them bottom and needing a win against the Netherlands in their next game, and for the Netherlands to win all their subsequent matches, all their subsequent matches to not be relegated. So Germany are in a relegation battle, and who do you think should manage them to secure their kind of position? Tony Pulis?
Well, he'd be strict at the back.
Yeah.
Just going to say that. I've got no idea international-wise who would take up that job. Was it the Bayern Munich manager who was manager for absolutely ages?
Oh,
Begins with a H or something, maybe.
Kunkers. I mean, what's his name is still in charge at the moment, and it doesn't look like he'd be losing his job. But it's interesting to kind of think, is it kind of like a relegation battle? Do they need to change the manager up?
No. Do they just obviously, when teams in the league are sort of struggling and going to relegation, they look at that Big Sam.
Yeah, exactly. I saw a fake article on that actually. Somewhere.
That's crazy. I think I've got no idea who they would seriously actually get in, but I think Germany's it's a really interesting situation what's happening right now. Obviously not for the Germany fans, they're going to be absolutely fuming, but it's just interesting to see sort of where it all went wrong. Almost, you look at those players are still performing successfully for they're almost. It's like England and Germany are switching places in some sense. Those players, they play so well for their club week in, week out. Come to the international stage and it just falls apart. I think you look at the players they've got, just that back line of just sort of having Neuer, Boateng, Hummels, and into these three world-class players who are all really, really good and still playing very well from country. Their club. When it comes to country, doesn't work well together at all. And obviously losing against the likes of Holland, it's just really, really poor result. And obviously having a poor World Cup, as you said, I'm not really sure where to put my finger on it. I think I've never really seen. Obviously, we have teams win leagues, win titles, win World Cups, and then obviously after a couple of years, it lasts forever. It's a bit like Spain, to be honest, when they had that period where they won 2 Euros in a World Cup, all back to back or something, and then they just sort of crumbled after a bit of time. It just doesn't seem to work. I feel like because that could be down to football being such an ever-changing game. We talk about Southgate's style of football with England, how that is sort of the in thing that is working right now and being so successful. Everyone, going to start aiming towards that because that's how football works right now. Obviously, to go back to a couple of years ago, Germany and Spain were two of the best teams in the world, and that style of football with those sorts of players was the thing that was working. I think everything changes over time, and obviously their time's coming to the end. But no one can definitely rule them out at all. Easily Germany can go on sort of 10-game win streak. They could win their league, get promoted to the next sort of level in that Nations League thing, or they could just continue to play poorly and get relegated, which sounds crazy to say a country gets relegated.
Yeah.
It could happen.
It could happen, and I know what you mean. It's almost like there's always a need to diversify and to get with the times of football. And it's almost like Germany have been able to do that for the last 10 years or so, but now they've just fallen behind a tiny bit, which means that they have to restart almost again. And I think you've kind of hit the nail on the head there. But yeah, as you said, it's kind of weird to think that a nation might be relegated. And for all you Fulham fans, we might be seeing Felix Magath in charge of Germany, the German equivalent of Sam Allardyce, and the one who told Reda Hangeland to put a lump of cheese on his injury to cure it.
I did not know that.
Yes, and he was also the manager that told that one of his training techniques was to get everyone onto the football pitch and to make them stand in the position for about an hour so they can get their sense of position right as a kind of a punishment.
That is insane.
Yeah, but he's held in Germany as like the Sam Allardyce equivalent or the Tony Pulis, kind of someone that will get you out of trouble. So you never know, we might see Felix Magath in charge of Germany. But yes, that kind of wraps up our Germany talk. And then lastly, we're going to talk about a bit about Carl Lafferty and kind of footballers' attitudes in general. So Carl Lafferty was called up to Northern Ireland by Michael O'Neill, only to refuse his call up. He did say that he had an injury, but I think Michael O'Neill still wanted to call him up. However, Carl Lafferty denied it, and he obviously didn't travel with the squad, which has left the Northern Ireland FA to impose this kind of sanction on him, which means he can't play any club football for 5 days, I think, since he was not called up, basically, if that makes any sense. So this means that he will miss Rangers' game against Hamilton Academical. And I just want to get your opinions on this. Is this the FA of Northern Ireland going too far in punishing this player? Does this show that Carl Lafferty doesn't want to play for Northern Ireland? Or is it kind of just a little rift and we'll all just get on with our lives afterwards? Or is it kind of just a bit like, oh gosh, this shouldn't happen in football?
Yeah. I think this one is complicated, but not complicated if it seems, if that makes any sense. So I reckon, obviously I don't actually know, I don't have any intel on the Carl Lafferty, but I would presume that a player would always want to play for their country. Obviously we had this thing, where, say, England calling up their players, and then let's say Manchester United got the Manchester derby on the weekend, and some of the Man United players go, oh, I've got a little niggle, I've got like a tight calf, I need to stay here and train with the squad and see my medical coach, things like that.
Yeah.
Just because they don't want to risk an injury in playing games, because they know that they won't be if they play at United. So I think that is always a possibility that he could actually be just lying because he just wants to play for the Rangers right now. But I find that quite unlikely, especially with him and how much Northern Ireland have developed over the years. Doing well. They're fairly successful. Had a really good Euros previously as well. Everything sort of went well for them. So I couldn't imagine it being that. So I think it's more to do with just he has genuinely got a little injury and he doesn't want to play. And either the manager believes him or not, but would still just like him to come, or it could be tactical wise, game plan, looking forward to their new games. Carl Lafferty's got a big part of that squad, one of the biggest players they do have. So he's not important that they wouldn't want to have. So I think that's probably the most likely thing. And obviously the FA looking from an outside perspective, they haven't got concrete evidence that a player is injured. Why on earth would you not want to play for your country? It doesn't really make any sense. Personally, I would never return that England. I don't think many English players would. It's more an outside influence sort of saying to him, oh, you should stay, etc. So they're disappointed. So I think they're just basically covering themselves and going, actually, well, if you do say you are injured and you can't play a game, you can train, that's fine, but you are not playing a game within that period, because therefore you'd probably be lying. I think that's probably the most likely outcome. Do you think, Sam?
Yeah, I see what you mean there, actually. It's kind of not a punishment, but like, well, prove it then. You can't play then because you're obviously injured. I think it is a bit harsh, but it ultimately it is the player's decision whether they want to play for the national team or not. I mean, I don't quite understand it because I would want to, no matter what. I mean, of course, club football is important. But like when your nation's calling you up, that should be pride for you, especially if you played for them before.
You wouldn't even consider it.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, if you never played for the nation before and you have no intention of, that's okay, or if you have an injury. But in this case, he does have a small injury, but he can still travel, if that makes any sense. He could still be a part of the team and be a bit of the teamwork. Because I can imagine he's quite an influence in the dressing room, being quite a iconic figure in kind of at least the media and kind of culture in football, but also he's quite the character. He's got quite the kind of a good personality. You can imagine be quite influential in the dressing room. So if I was him, I would have just gone anyways and just see how it had gone. Like if you weren't feeling it, just talk to the manager in person, almost clear the air a bit, saying, well, I've got a bit of an injury. I've turned up, but is it all right if I give this a miss, because I really have an important game and I don't want to get injured for that, and I'm not going to be much help with my injury. That'll be fine. But it's obviously there's been a kind of a breakdown in communication which hasn't fared well for either party. So hopefully this situation can be resolved. I don't think it's anything of like Carl Lafferty being a bad person or being kind of unpatriotic. I just think the way it's occurred is making it seem like that, but we don't know all the details, of course. It's just an interesting kind of story to kind of discuss, because there's so many kind of different elements of like maybe our footballers becoming too kind of self-minded and not caring about their club or their country anymore. And also that kind of thing is football trying to kind of fight back and say, well, actually you're contracted to us to play. we decide what you do, you don't decide, if that makes any sense. It's kind of that.
Did you say he plays for Rangers?
Yeah, he plays for Rangers, yeah.
So obviously, Gerrard's manager of Rangers, is he right now?
Yes, he is, indeed.
So, I might be looking too far out into it, but obviously Gerrard's a sort of patriotic sort of person, but with him, his England career never was amazing in terms of, there wasn't too much success when he actually played, quite disappointing at times, having awful World Cups and European Championship, sometimes not even qualifying for those in 2008, things like that. So possibly his experience as a manager would obviously he would have enjoyed playing for England, but important wise, if he's a Ranger and he's thinking, you're one of my top strikers, I want you playing at the weekend. And he's thinking, what, does international football really matter that much? Can he just sort of have a little break and just skip this part and not play or train and go away with the team for that? Could that have an influence? I think possibly, if we had a manager, I don't know, say like Jurgen Klopp, in charge of a team, and let's say, I don't know, Mane was called up to duty. Mane always goes to the African Cup of Nations. I know he's always been fit for those, it's hard to compare. But I couldn't really imagine Klopp being that sort of person going, actually, you know what, we do have, a big game against Manchester United on the weekend, but he's not probably going to call him back. I just think Klopp is a passionate person who will respect, players taking time and choices to play for their country, etc. So, I don't know, it might be a little far-fetched, that idea, but I think it's going to probably have some influence on his decision in the end. But like you said, it's just a bit of probably a lack of communication and just a bit of confusion across all parties, and no one really knows what the true outcome is.
Yeah, exactly.
We have to wait till the next international break to see what happens with it.
Exactly. I mean, just quickly before we wrap up on that, I want to quickly say about maybe he's looking at the future and he's thinking, well, Rangers are still in Europe, they're still in most of the cup competitions, they've got some big games coming up. I think against Aberdeen after this, so he's thinking, this is my only kind of chance to get a rest. So maybe that's kind of going through his head, but still, as you said, and I've said before as well, we don't know all the details. So it'd be interesting to see whether he accepts his call up next time around for Northern Ireland. But yes, that kind of brings us to an end, really. It's been quite the show today. We've been talking a lot about international football, which is nice for a change. Of course, next time we'll be talking about the Premier League, no doubt, and anything else football-wise. Yes, hope you've enjoyed me and James. I always called you James. Sorry, one of my flatmates is called James. And sorry, Jake, I've enjoyed it.
Yes, it's been good. It's been a good one. I do enjoy talking about international football a lot, especially when it comes to sort of England and sort of neighbouring home country. We can talk about very relatable towards them as well.
Yeah, exactly. So it's been a nice change. Hope you've enjoyed it. Of course, if you want to get in contact with us with any questions, any feedback from the show, anything you'd like, just anything really football-wise, you can contact us via Twitter, which is at Box Commentary. You can contact us via Instagram, which is also at Box Commentary, or you can email us, which is thecommentarybox.contact@gmail.com. Yes, that brings us to an end. We shall see you in a few weeks' time. I've been Sam. See ya.